I refused to lend my lawn mower again after it came back broken twice. That afternoon, my front lawn was set on fire. My neighbor stood at the edge with a lighter in hand and said, "You never deserved this grass anyway." Firefighters barely saved my porch, but when they dug into the ground for damage control, they uncovered something that had been buried there for years. I'm a 44-year-old guy living alone in North Olmsted, Ohio. Quiet place, mix of old families and tired single folks like me just trying to keep things simple. After my divorce, I bought this small house at the edge of a cul-de-sac. Not perfect, but it was mine. I got really into taking care of the lawn, not for show, not to impress anyone. I think I just needed to control something after everything else fell apart. The lawn became my thing. I researched fertilizers, aeration, seed blends. I even got a rain gauge to track moisture. I cut it twice a week with a Toro mower I bought new with my first post-divorce bonus from work. I felt stupidly proud of that grass. My next-door neighbor, Russ, didn't take care of much of anything. His siding was peeling. His gutters hung off the side like broken ribs. His yard looked like a dog park nobody cleaned. He was maybe in his mid-50s, tall but hunched, beard like he never stopped growing it since 1997. Always shirtless in summer, always smoking. We didn't talk much. He mostly stared. Then last summer, he caught me outside edging near the driveway and came over, said his mower wouldn't start. Asked if he could borrow mine. Real quick. I didn't think twice. I said, "Sure. Just bring it back when you're done." He brought it back that night, but it looked wrong. There was a crack in the plastic deck near the left wheel, and the gas cap was gone. I asked about it and he said, "Was like that already, man. Maybe you didn't notice." He laughed like it was all no big deal. I didn't argue. I just let it go. 2 weeks later he asked again. "Mower's still dead. Let me borrow yours just one more time." This time I paused. But I still handed it over. He returned it reeking of spilled fuel, blades so dull I could see grass clumps still stuck underneath. That was it. I sharpened the blades, replaced the cap again, and made a rule in my head, never again. So when he came around the third time, in early June, I was out trimming the bushes and saw him walking up with his usual lazy swagger. He had a beer in hand at 11 a.m. "Need the mower again," he said, like it was already settled. I didn't even look at him. No. Not after how you returned it last time." He just stood there for a second, then laughed to himself and muttered, "Damn, you're one of those." I turned around. "One of what?" "Uptight little kings of the cul-de-sac. Got your little castle and your little yard. Don't worry. You'll get yours." I said nothing. He walked off. And that should have been the end of it. It wasn't. That Sunday, around 2:15 p.m., I was inside watching the Browns game when I heard what sounded like a pop, followed by a strange crackle. I looked outside and saw orange light dancing across the bottom of my window. Smoke poured past the glass. I ran outside and my chest locked up. My front lawn was on fire. Not just a small patch. My entire lawn. Flames rolled across the dry grass like waves. The heat hit my face like opening an oven door. I grabbed the hose and ran straight into the smoke, spraying like hell, screaming for help. A neighbor across the street started filming. Another called 911. And that's when I saw him. Russ. He was standing on the edge of his driveway, no shirt, no shoes, just a pair of old jeans. He was holding something in his hand. A lighter. He smiled when he saw me looking. "You never deserved this grass anyway." I dropped the hose and charged toward him, but a wall of heat stopped me. By the time the firefighters arrived, the fire had licked up the side of my porch. The vinyl siding was melting. The front bushes were ash. One firefighter grabbed me and told me to stay back while they worked. They got the fire out. Barely. One of them told me if they'd arrived a minute later, the porch would have caught fully, and then the whole house. But that wasn't the worst part. While they were digging into the burn area near the front porch to check for root damage or gas line risks, they found something hard under the soil. One of them radioed for the fire captain. They widened the hole. Then one of them called the police. It was a skeleton. Human. They taped everything off and made me leave the property while they investigated. I sat in a cop car, answering questions for hours. I told them I had nothing to do with whatever they found. I'd only lived in the house for 3 years. I even showed them my closing paperwork. A detective showed up and asked if I knew the previous owner. I said his name was Walter Steiger. An old man who died in a nursing home about 5 years ago. Never met him. That's when things started to spin. They did tests on the bones. Female. Young adult. Probably buried over 10 years ago. A week later, they told me she had a name, Amanda Tilden. I recognized the name. Everyone in town did. She'd gone missing at 22 after a party. Posters used to be all over the stores. Her case went cold in 2014. And suddenly, it wasn't cold anymore. The cops started asking about Russ. I told them everything, the mower, the threats, the fire. Turns out, Russ had been questioned back when Amanda disappeared. Witnesses saw them together that night. He was one of the last people to see her alive. But they didn't have a body back then. Nothing stuck. Now they had a body. And they had motive. They arrested Russ 2 days later. Arson. Suspicion of homicide. Unlawful disposal of human remains. The whole street lit up with squad cars and flashing lights. But it wasn't over. Not even close. Because Russ's family wasn't done with me. After the police took Russ, everything should have calmed down. It didn't. The first week after his arrest, I barely slept. News vans parked down the street. Reporters knocked on my door. One even climbed my porch railing to peek in the window. I had to tape a sign to my door that said, "And no comment. Get off my property." People online called me a hero. Others accused me of setting him up. A couple of fake Facebook accounts popped up with my name and picture, saying I was obsessed with Amanda, that I framed Russ to get attention. I had to report them one by one. But none of that shook me like what happened next. One night, maybe a week and a half after Russ's arrest, I heard a noise outside around 3 a.m. It wasn't loud. Just a weird metallic clink, like someone dropped something heavy on pavement. I got out of bed and looked through the blinds. There was a man standing in my driveway. Not moving. Just standing there. He was tall, had a hoodie up, hands in his pockets. When I turned the porch light on, he backed up slowly into the dark, then walked away. No rush. Like he wanted me to see him. The next morning, I found a crowbar lying near my garage door. The side of the garage was scraped. Deep gouges in the paint, like someone tried to pry the door open and gave up. I called the cops. They came out, took pictures, but told me straight, no prints, no cameras, not much they could do. I bought security cams the same day. Spent $800 on a full setup with motion sensors and cloud backup. I wasn't taking chances. The next hit came 2 days later. I came home from work and found my garage completely trashed. Tires slashed. Windshield busted. Someone poured what smelled like gasoline over everything inside, but must have chickened out before lighting it. Spray painted across the back wall in red. "You buried him. Now we bury you." This time the cops took it more seriously. They checked the footage. It showed 2 masked people. One was limping, the other had a tattoo on their hand that looked familiar. I couldn't be sure, but I thought I'd seen it before. That same night, I got a knock at the door. It was a man I'd never seen before. Mid-30s, shaved head, muscle shirt, arms covered in tattoos. "You the guy that got Russ locked up?" I didn't answer. Just stood behind the locked storm door. He laughed. "Russ's family. And we don't forget." Then he walked away. That was it. I had enough. I went to the police the next morning with everything. The threats, the footage, the damage. I asked for protection. They told me unless someone made a direct threat to my life or there was a court order, their hands were tied. So I did something I hadn't planned to do. I started digging. I started asking around. I went to the bar Amanda was last seen at, Murphy's Taproom. Still open, still grimy as hell. I talked to the bartender, an old guy named Lou who'd worked there forever. He remembered Amanda. Said she was sweet. Said she came in a lot near the end. And yeah, he remembered Russ too. He was always on her. Real clingy. One night he followed her into the parking lot. She shoved him. I saw it with my own eyes. Thought about calling the cops, but you know. Back then, people didn't step in. I kept digging. I found Amanda's sister, Jill, still living in town under her married name. I didn't want to bother her, but I figured she deserved to know what was going on. She told me something that chilled me to the bone. We always thought Russ did it. But the cops never found anything. We begged them to dig up that yard. Begged. They said they needed more proof. I asked her if she ever told the police why she suspected the yard. She nodded. Because the night Amanda disappeared, she texted me something. Just one line: if anything happens, check under the roses. There had been roses planted in my yard when I moved in. I ripped them out after the first summer because they were all dead. I remember digging them up. I remember hitting something hard, but figured it was an old pipe. I never thought more of it. Turns out, that's exactly where the firefighters had been digging when they found her. I went back to the cops with this. They reopened the full investigation on Russ as a murder case, not just because of the body, but because of Amanda's final message. Still, the harassment didn't stop. Someone slashed my tires again. The cameras caught a woman this time, short, heavy-set, wearing a hoodie. When the footage went public on the news, someone called in a tip. It was Russ's niece. Her name was Tara. She lived 2 blocks over. She was arrested the next day and charged with vandalism and attempted intimidation. I thought maybe, just maybe, things would slow down. But then I got a call from a private number. The voice on the other end was low. Calm. Male. You dig any deeper, you'll find more than bones. Click. No name. No way to trace it. Cops couldn't help. That night, I slept with a baseball bat next to the bed and a chair wedged against the door. I didn't know who to trust. I didn't know how far Russ's people would go. But I knew one thing: I wasn't done digging. Because I had a hunch there was more buried under that house. And if the cops weren't gonna find it, I would. After that call, something in me shifted. I wasn't scared anymore. I was pissed. They'd burned my lawn, destroyed my garage, tried to scare me into silence. All for a guy who probably murdered a young woman and buried her under his neighbor's roses like she was garbage. And they wanted me to pay for it? No. I wasn't letting this go. I took time off work. Told them I needed personal leave. They understood. Half the company had seen my house on the news anyway. I went to Home Depot, bought tools, a ground-penetrating radar rental, some contractor flags, and a cheap shovel. I wasn't just guessing. I was going to skin the entire yard. Call me obsessive. But I had a feeling. First few hours? Nothing. Just clay, roots, rocks. But near the back fence, something pinged on the radar. A hard shape about 5 feet long and 3 feet wide, less than 2 feet underground. I started digging. My hands blistered fast. The sun beat down. My shirt clung with sweat. But I didn't stop. I kept digging until my shovel hit wood. Rotten wood. I cleared the dirt and found an old box. Not a coffin, just a large crate. Like a shipping trunk. It was sealed with rusted nails and wrapped in what looked like garbage bags. I called the police right away. They opened it on site, wearing gloves and masks. Inside were 3 things: a plastic-wrapped blanket, blood-stained and marked with the initials AT in faded Sharpie. A pair of pink Converse shoes, child-sized. A manila folder filled with photographs. Most of the photos were old, printed from film. Some were Polaroids. All showed young women, passed out, half-dressed, clearly not aware they were being photographed. Most looked scared. One was Amanda. One was someone else the police recognized immediately. Another girl who had gone missing in 2012. Kelsey Martin. She was 19. Last seen outside a bowling alley in Parma Heights. They never found her. Now they had another possible burial site. And Russ? He wasn't talking. His lawyer said he wanted a deal. Said he'd lead police to more bodies if they dropped the death penalty. That's when it hit me, this wasn't just about Amanda. Russ had done this more than once. And for years, nobody knew. I thought that would be the end of the drama. That once the cops had what they needed, the threats would stop. But I was wrong again. One night, I got home and found my front door open. I always lock it. Always. I stepped inside, holding my phone in one hand and a hammer in the other. Nothing looked touched, until I got to the kitchen. On the table was a single item. A folded piece of newspaper. On top of it, my old Toro Mower key. The newspaper was open to the obituary section. A name was circled in red. Walter Steiger. The man who owned my house before me. I didn't understand it at first. Why circle his name? Then I started thinking, maybe this wasn't just Russ acting alone. Maybe Walter had something to do with it. Maybe he knew about Amanda. Maybe he helped bury her. Or maybe he just looked the other way. And maybe someone was trying to remind me I was living in a house built on secrets. I brought the clue to the detective assigned to the case. She looked at it and raised an eyebrow. We actually had that same thought, she said. Walter had a record. Petty stuff mostly. DUIs, domestic complaints. But there was one thing that stood out. What? He used to run a group home for troubled teens. Closed it down in the late 90s after multiple reports of abuse. Guess who worked there as a maintenance guy? Russ, I said. She nodded. So maybe Walter knew. Maybe he helped. Maybe more happened in that house than anyone realized. That's when I really started looking at my house differently. It wasn't just a home anymore. It was a graveyard. After they found that second box, the whole investigation blew open. Russ was no longer just the crazy neighbor who set my lawn on fire. He was now being linked to at least 3 missing women over the past 15 years. All of them young, all with ties to the area. 2 of them, Amanda Tilden and Kelsey Martin, were likely buried right under my lawn. But the one that changed everything wasn't buried yet. Her name was Megan Travers. She was 21, went missing 2 months before Russ set my lawn on fire. And someone spotted her bracelet, handmade, unique, with beads spelling MEG, in one of the photos from that box in my yard. That photo had been taken recently. Megan might still be alive. Police searched Russ's house again, this time with more gear, more people, and a warrant that allowed them to break through walls. And when they ripped out the paneling in the basement, they found a hidden room, small, no windows, old mattress, chains bolted to the wall, and a pile of dirty blankets in the corner. But Megan wasn't there. Then something strange happened. Someone called the cops from a payphone in Medina County, about 45 minutes away. No name. Just a scratchy voice saying, "Check the old storm drain off Route 18, near the warehouse." They found her. Barely alive. Beaten, dehydrated, but alive. She said Russ had kept her in that basement. Said he brought her food twice a day, never spoke, just stared. One day, she woke up and he was gone. That same day, his niece Tara came down. She was high, angry, said she had to clean up the mess. Megan pretended to be unconscious. When Tara left to get help, Megan crawled through the small basement window. It led to an old storm drain behind the warehouse. She stayed hidden there for 2 days before she found a phone. The case against Russ was now bigger than anyone thought. And Tara? Charged with attempted murder, unlawful imprisonment, and conspiracy. But here's where the revenge really started. Russ begged for a plea deal. He offered to tell police where more bodies were if they dropped the possibility of a death sentence. They agreed to hear him out. He drew maps. 4 of them. Each one showed places where he claimed to have buried more victims, across different towns in Ohio. They dug up 2 and confirmed the remains. The others, they're still searching. Russ was done. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole, plus 280 years. He'll rot in a cell. No sunlight. No freedom. No way out. And his family? They didn't get off easy. Tara got 35 years. No parole. His brother Caleb, the one who threw a rock at my house, was caught trying to intimidate a witness. Turned out he'd also been hiding evidence. A duffel bag with another woman's ID, clothes, and one of Russ's old burner phones. He's serving 20 years now. The entire family name became poison in town. But now, here's the twist no one saw coming. 6 weeks after the final conviction, I got a letter. No return address. Just my name, typed on the envelope. Inside was a photo, black and white, grainy. Looked like it had been taken years ago. It showed a group of teenage girls. Standing behind them? Walter Steiger. And beside him, Russ. The girls looked scared. Some had bruises. On the back of the photo, written in faded pen, they were never just Russ's victims. I took it to the detective. She froze when she saw it. A new investigation opened into the old group home Walter used to run, the one he owned before he sold the house to me. Turns out, that place had been shut down quietly. Too quietly. One by one, survivors started coming forward. Women in their 30s and 40s now. They said they were abused, locked in closets, drugged. Not just by Walter, but by other men he let in, Russ included. Walter had died 5 years ago. No charges could reach him now. But the people who covered for him? They were still alive. And suddenly school board members, social workers, even an old city councilman, names that used to hold power, were being investigated. Turns out, that quiet house I bought after my divorce? It was never just a house. It was a crime scene with a fresh coat of paint. I ended up moving. Couldn't stay there. Even after they cleared the yard and put new sod down. I kept hearing her voice, Amanda's, saying, "Check under the roses." I sold the house to the county. They turned it into a memorial site for missing women in Cuyahoga County. There's a plaque out front now with their names, Amanda, Kelsey, Megan, and more they're still uncovering. As for me? I'm in therapy. Still dealing with it. But I don't regret anything. Russ wanted to ruin me for not lending him a mower. Instead, he lit a fuse that uncovered years of buried pain, lies, and crimes. He wanted to destroy my lawn. And instead, he destroyed his whole legacy. I'm not a hero. But I dug until the truth couldn't stay buried. And for the first time in a long time, it feels like those women are finally being seen.